States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, could I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Could I get a motion to approve the April 10th, 2023 minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes from April 10th.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. School committee chairperson's comments. I should say something. This is my last meeting. I didn't say much before. I just want to say thank you. I've had a great 11 and a half years working on the committee. It's been great administration, great teachers, great students, great parents, great committee members. So I've been lucky in that regard and been happy to be a part of this in the last 11 and a half years. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for your help. Fantastic job. Just
We
from
do it all together.
just getting advice from you and relating on different topics. You're a fantastic person to work with. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, on to community comments.
Let's give it up for Phil.
Oh, yeah. All right, then we'll move on from there. Student comments. All right, I think we start with you first before we move on.
So I have two updates. First is that AP exams start today and they run from May 1st to May 12th. So good luck to everyone who is participating in that. And then second is that we have a multicultural night at Netmark on May 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. And it's to celebrate the rich diversity of our community. And it also aims the global citizenship for the
That's great, thank you. And then I think next we're gonna turn it over to John and Mary Ann. Principals from
We
students.
can have Adam and Dylan join us at the table also, that would be great.
Sitting. All right.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for the chance to be here tonight and to give you an update on some really exciting work that has been going on over the course of the past 3 years at NUG, but especially over the course of the year. Myself set up here. We're thrilled to be joined tonight. We have two seniors with us who are really the highlight of our presentation, Dylan Hodge and Adam Meckel. Both Dylan and Adam participated in our Mastery Transcript Consortium pilot program. And we're so proud of the work that they've done, and we're excited to give you an update on Mastery, where we're at, but most importantly, to give them a chance to share a little bit about their experience. And then we can take some questions as we share a little bit about where we're at and where we're going. So Mastery, I would say, is framed by this question. It's a question that we've been grappling with here in our district in many different ways. We recognize that student grades are absolutely important and are part of a student's progress, and they should be celebrated, and they also are relevant in the world beyond school. But it doesn't tell the whole story of our students. The students beside me, my two students who live in my home, the 600 students here, if you ask us about them and their strengths and their talents and their passions, it doesn't always get captured by grades. And so as a district, we've been approaching this work, and up behind me, you see some of the vision statements from our strategic plan from 5 years ago. And together we met as a community and we decided we wanted to focus on the whole child. We wanted a school district that celebrated passions and interests and curiosities of students. We wanted to be a district that led innovation and looked at things differently, that leveraged technology and community partners, and that found new metrics of success in order to recognize our kids. We refer to that often, and the slide behind me references this blue sky thinking. And we're so grateful to work in a community that gets together, coalesced around a really clear vision of what teaching and learning should look like, and found an aspirational vision of what it should look like. I think there are a lot of schools and communities that go through that process and they think of very linear, very pragmatic plans. Ours was not pragmatic. It was big picture, it was bold, it was aspirational, it was powerful. And so you go from blue sky thinking, we often talk about the concept of the rubber hits the road. So if we are interested in the working with the whole child, what does that look like? If we're focused on coming up with new metrics of success, something that's in the fabric, the architecture of school, what does that look like? What's that new data set look like? How do you leverage technology in a meaningful way? How do you incorporate students' passions? How do you help them tell their story? And Mastery Transcript Consortium has been a really powerful partner in that work for us. It's not the only way that this work is taking place, but it certainly is a key part of the work that's been taking place. So we're going to share a bit about Mastery. We'll give you a quick overview. And again, I'm going to try and limit my talking. I get fired up, as you can tell. But the real highlight of the show here is Dylan and Adam, and we'll talk in just a minute. The Mastery Transcript, just for those who are not familiar with it, is can be juxtaposed with the traditional transcript. You can think of a traditional transcript that is courses, years, grades. Very much about seat time, very much about what experience you had, what'd you get in English 10, what'd you get in English 11, what'd you get in senior English. The Mastery Transcript juxtaposed of that is a very different tool. It's digital, clickable, and dynamic. So it has some of the features you'd expect in a tool for the 21st century. It does not have grades or GPA. It embraces telling the student's story beyond grades, and by doing that, focuses on what they're able to do, not on what they studied. So competencies over content. It is meant to be universally understandable by admissions officers, so it can be read in 3 to 5 minutes and can be used as part of the student's college application process. It features actual student work, so you can click into work that a student presents, but it goes beyond the power of a portfolio because it carries the weight of the school record. It's meant to be a tool that brings us closer to an equitable vision of school because it focuses on a student's story and helps provide a context for that student story. And it definitely focuses on growth and learning beyond grades. So that's Mastery. You're going to get a chance to see what Dylan and Adams looks like tonight. This idea, and you can see the traditional transcript behind this quote, is not a new one, that there are limitations in the traditional way we look at student success in school. Just in the course of the past 2 weeks, ETS, the testing system, has collaborated with the Carnegie Institute. And Carnegie Institute is the one that established this unit of measure by which we award credit in schools. A full year is equal to 1 credit based on seat time and passing. They have just collaborated in the last 2 weeks and announced a partnership based on competency-based assessments, recognizing that this really is a relic of another era, and in order to make sure our students are prepared, we need to change the way we celebrate success and measure success. Mastery is an organization that's done that. It was built by a small community of first independent schools and now has 378 schools across the nation, nearly a mix of public and private, nearly 50-50. And they are responding to the challenge that not only we in Mendon-Upton recognized 5 years ago coming up with our strategic plan, or parents recognize in looking at the strengths of their child and not finding it represented in a traditional transcript, but that college admissions officers have been extremely challenged to find the right fit for their university. There's a limited amount of information you can capture from a traditional transcript. And yet, they will tell you how important it is. It truly is one of the first things they look at when they assess whether students are matched with the school. So Mastery Transcript has said, we want to solve this problem with a new way and a universal tool that can be applied. With that in mind, we decided here, we've been members for 3 years, and we decided it was time to act on that membership. We got tired of watching from the sidelines and learning from other schools. Then last year, we decided to launch a pilot program.
Awesome. So in kicking off the pilot program last spring, we worked with, we proposed it out to all juniors at the time that were going to be seniors, and we asked for no more than 10 students. So we were looking to work with a very small group of students who are interested in exploring this idea of telling their story beyond the traditional transcript through the lens of Portrait of a Learner is what it really comes down to. We'll talk a little bit more of that. We had 10 students at the time. We expanded it to 11 students because it's really hard to say no sometimes when they're knocking on our door, that we started with. We held workshops in the spring, we held workshops over the summer, and then again in the fall to kind of bring students up to speed in terms of the competencies embedded in the Portrait of a Learner, as well as some context in terms of personal narrative. How do we tell our story? Where does story come from? So did some background work on that. We had some digital work to do too in terms of the platform and kicking it off. So we had to formalize our means of credits aligned to Portrait of a Learner. Mastery talks about them in terms of credits. We as a district talk about them in terms of competencies. So we were able to do some work there to align it, to build the system in the back. The students all get their individual account per se, but we have administrator accounts where we're able to see a lot of it. As part of it too, it's not just the foundational credits that are found inside of the Portrait of a Learner as we have developed it. There are opportunities for advanced credits the way that Mastery works. So we spent some time talking about advanced credits. So if a student identified as a global citizen and had a lot of skill sets in that area, a means for them to showcase that as part of the transcript. So we work with students, they develop these individual profiles. We worked with them, coaching sessions, counselors helped us out. We participated in the MTC, which is Mastery Transcript Symposium, network with other schools that were doing this work to really try and figure out what was happening. We worked directly with Mastery Transcripts Consortium. They were wonderful in the sense of helping us bridge that gap between the traditional grades that our students were receiving and the Mastery Transcript. Held a parent information session, and in the end, we had 6 students complete their Mastery learning records, and that got shipped off to 47 universities, and there was 61 applications total. So that was really exciting. Another huge part of this process for us was John and I picked up the phone and called every single one of those admissions offices where those applications were sent. So we gained a lot of valuable feedback, hearing directly from college admissions offices, as well as had the opportunity ourselves personally to talk about the stories of our students, which has never been an opportunity that we've had before, to have that direct communication where they can pull up a learning record in front of them and we can have a conversation about what our students have to offer to that college or university. So we've kind of been through that whole cycle. Students are obviously now receiving some acceptances back and making decisions as to where they're going. And we've held a feedback session with them and are trying to kind of collect so that we can figure out kind of the best way forward with that. So we thought we'd take a couple minutes. We're going to actually pull up Dylan and Adam's profiles. I'll give you a quick overview of what you see on the screen in front of you, so that Dylan and Adam don't need to do that, but they can kind of tap into some of those elements.
As Mary Ann gets ready to pull up their profiles, just a quick update on, so we began this pilot program in spring, and then in September of this year, Mastery released a new tool called the Mastery Learning Record. So they now offer 2 tools, the Mastery Learning Transcript and the Learning Record. They look exactly the same. A couple color differences, so you can visually notice the difference. The main difference for a school, though, is that if you send the Mastery transcript, you cannot send a companion traditional transcript. I think Mastery realized that was an obstacle for a lot of students and a lot of schools. They always use the phrase, we're not going to gamble with our students' futures. And I think they were getting feedback from schools to say, this looks great, it aligns with who we are, but how do I know for sure that this is going to work? So they developed and launched in September the Mastery Learning Record. It looks almost exactly the same, but it allows you to ship it either one as your sole educational record, meaning you don't send a traditional transcript, or you can send it with your traditional transcript. That made it a lot easier for us and cleared the path, because at that point, it was purely value added. As long as the students were providing the best representation of who they were, there's no downside to it, because you can couple it with your traditional transcript if you want, or make the decision, no, this is going to speak for who I am, I'm not going to send a traditional transcript. So they really cleared a lot of the concerns that were up by providing that product.
Awesome. So up in the front of the screen, you see exactly what a college admissions officer would see. This is a transcript that Adam has full access to edit. Essentially, a lot of the building takes place collaboratively, so students can enter information, it gets approved on the administrative side, but you'll see some basic information here about Adam. You'll see a student statement. Students have the opportunity, I don't know if I can zoom see so that people can see it. He'll talk about this in just a moment, I am sure, but students write a statement about themselves. You'll see in the middle of the screen, this is just the visual, but this is essentially the competency part of this, and you can see very clearly it's aligned to our Portrait of a Learner. So solution seeker, effective communicator, all around. Each of those little lines represents almost a sub-skill of each of the competencies. So effective communicator has been broken down into sub-skills or sub-competencies that the student has to demonstrate that they have, earned that skill and provide evidence of that. The bolder lines around the outside edge are some advanced competencies, and those are earned kind of at different rates. So one student may identify themselves more in the realm of effective communicator or skillful collaborator, while someone else may identify more as a mindful learner. So you start to see the visual of the bars in certain places. Adams is obviously very well-rounded here, but all of the students receive the basic competencies and then can earn some advanced credits. Down here is the full list of competencies. And then it is a full list of courses that Adam is taking during his time. You'll see it in Dylan's too, but there are no grades associated with that. So it is a record of the courses that have been taken, but no grades associated with it. And then the exciting part of this too is the evidence. And again, I'm sure each of our students will talk a little bit about the evidence that they selected, but each of the evidence pieces is clickable, brings them in, they're able to articulate why they chose that selected piece of evidence, how it's related to the competencies, and then a physical piece of evidence that is attached to that so that college admissions officers can click in and see it. So I'm gonna skip to, this is Dylan's right here, I'm gonna pass it to Dylan. Dylan was a Portrait of a Learner scholar for us. We can talk a little bit about that. But Dylan entered the world of Portrait of a Learner with us freshman year. So when Dylan came to us, he kind of jumped on board with this idea of competencies and Portrait of a Learner and telling his story, which we're really excited about. So Dylan, I don't know if you want to speak to that piece of evidence. I can click around or kind of just talk about how you landed in the Mastery Pilot.
Yeah, at the beginning of the Mastery Pilot, I did go into the Portrait of a Learner at the end of my freshman year, which was miraculously at the beginning when COVID started. So we did have a lot of trouble with it, but we were able to manage everything all together and just produce a beautiful resume that we can either give to colleges or different job applications. Because what I actually used this for a job application, and they actually accepted me because of how nice it looked and how they were able to learn a lot more about me, and that it's just not all about like numbers, and it's about who they really are inside and what they show to the world. And so through Portrait of Learners, you see up here, it shows that I'm an inspired innovator, and it just shows a whole list of facts and quotes, and it just really puts yourself out there to the rest of the world to show them who you really are and what you can bring forth to the world and to different aspects of your life. And it flows really well with Mastery Transcript, being that it's like a beginning process of Mastery Transcript and then going right into Mastery Transcript. It's a beautiful piece of evidence because it's like a little slice of what Mastery Transcript's all about, but it's all compacted into one space. While Mastery Transcript is all like more spread out and just shows evenly everything, instead of just saying that I'm an inspired innovator, which is my main competency, but it shows how each competency is like affects me and what I am for each one.
Awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the impact, or what you feel was the impact of being able to tell your story to college admissions through this?
Yeah, really just like 3 words, mastery is impactful. And it got me to places where I don't even think I was able to get into. Like 2 schools I got into were Colorado School of Mines, which is so-called the MIT of the Midwest. And then I also got into Loyola Marymount, which I had no thought of getting into, but I feel like with Mastery Transcript, I had an opportunity and a chance to get into these schools that I personally did not think I was going to be able to get to. And once I got that acceptance letter, I was pretty ecstatic. And I just knew that with this program, it falls within every moral aspect that I've had since freshman year, was that grades don't define a person of who they are. Numbers don't define a person of who they are. It's what they show to the world and what they do to help the community in certain ways. Like there's one evidence in there. I went to Cambodia this past summer on a trip with World Challenge from Nipmuc. And with that trip, I was able to learn so much more than I was able to learn ever here. Because when you're in a third world country, everything turns different. And with that trip, I learned experiences and events that I would never think in my dreams I would ever think about. Like we saw massive elephants, and then we also saw Angkor Wat, which is a huge culture aspect. And what that brought to me was just the impact of it and how each person is like, how each person has their own competency and how they show that with their speech, emotions, and everything that's really about them. And I was a little bit unlucky during this trip because I did get COVID there, which I did have to spend a couple of days in an isolated third world country hotel, which was not that fun. But I was able to use that experience that I had before the trip, and I created at least 3/4 of the mastery transcript while I was in isolation there. So I had them everything fresh and ready, and it was all played out right there. And it's just the experiences that I had really put into perspective of how much of an impact I can make towards the world.
Awesome. Thank you. So good examples of things that wouldn't show up on a traditional transcript. And you do a fabulous job of extracting the learning, even out of the most unfortunate events, right?
That was a little rough.
You were wonderful. Awesome. So I'm going to flip back to Adam. Adam, I know you have a lot to say. Can you share, I want to talk about your student statement because I think student statements are impactful too, but I think it will lead into kind of your thoughts or what you want to share about your process of mastery.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Adam. My student statement was, Adam believes that the mind has the power to overcome any obstacle. By using abstract thought, he enables himself to grow with hopes of one day maneuvering the world of business in a unique and innovative manner. So this is a little ironic, because I'm sitting in front of the school committee right now, but I've never been that well or that integrated within the school community. School never really fit me. I was never really fit in with it. Like I think that I'm able to keep up with all the work and I have the ability to do everything that I want to do within school, but not the motivation. And that comes in different areas of my life with the different endeavors and everything. And that's what this student statement really reflects, is that like, that's truly how I think of myself, is that I think that I can do anything that I want to do, that there's no limitations in front of me and that the limitations are coming from my mind, or it could be something, in this case, like school, where it's like, well, I need these grades to get into this school, and which is why mastery presented me with a good opportunity. And that opportunity led me into getting into a lot of schools, which I really wouldn't have gotten into before, because I didn't keep up the best grades in high school, but I also knew I was of value to the community around me and myself. So I knew I had something to offer. And within the student statement reflects this too, but within my actual evidence piece of it, I have two pieces of evidence from DECA, which is, if I'm sure most all of you, yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, and I articulated two pieces of evidence for this mastery transcript for my DECA competitions, which went pretty well. But it was a good step into the way that how I saw things and the solutions that I saw and the things that I felt like I could do, and where I could bring something to the table that was of value to not just me, but to everyone else. And having the ability to have like a college admissions officer or counselor or whatever to see that and to see that step into my life, as opposed to just seeing like, oh, he's a good learner, he can study, he can reflect his learning, he's good at memorization, he's somebody that we want to our school to like boost our numbers up. I didn't really fit in with that. I kind of fit in more with the innovative side of everything. So it's like, I want to be the one to defy the odds of everything, go against all this stuff, to create a new norm, to create new everything. And I could just really portray myself really well with this transcript. So I really liked it. And like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of school and academics and everything. It's not really my thing, but this did give me the opportunity to like present my different skill sets and my abilities that like I learned. Oh, there's another piece of evidence there too, it's a little side note. But if you scroll down, there's from my mindful learning, I think it was I did an internship in the Vista program here. Yeah, the special education internship. I did an internship here last year with the Vista program. And I took it because I thought it would be a good, just something good to learn, to deal with those kids, a good skill to have. And I didn't think it would be of use to me or anything. I thought my DECA projects would be, but I didn't think this would be. And then when I got pitched with this opportunity, it was Mr. Merton just randomly told me one day that I should look into mastery transcript. And I saw all of these competencies, all these categories and everything. And I could just fit in experiences that I've had, which I know I've learned some things from. So like for this was for Mindful Learner. And basically, not to go too deep into like what I actually wrote or anything, but it's basically a reflection of my experience with the kids and how I got through to them and how I broke like two different worlds, because they're living in a different world, in a different reality than I am, and that all of us are. So it was like really breaking down the barriers and showed like how I could be mindful of their situation and still effectively communicate with them. Because originally I had it in effective communicator, but then I switched it. But it just shows that something just like really cool that it shows for a person is like their ability to do something. Whereas if I'm going to submit just my grades, you can see my ability to perform. But I feel like most people have that ability. It just takes repetition and constant grinding and everything, which I reflect in different areas of my life, and which this highlighted it with.
Awesome, thank you. And I know, Adam, you say you don't like school, but we couldn't get Adam out of school.
Yeah.
It'd be 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, Adam was still hanging around, working on his master's.
Yes, and that was one more thing I would like to say is that this provided me with a reason to actually be motivated to come to school and everything. And like Mr. Ryan said, I was here all the time. I was constantly working on this for like 3 months straight, like just every little detail of changing 2 words from here to here and here to here. And like I love that because I can be really hyper productive and hyper focused when I want to be. And this was just a good outlet for me to actually present that to everyone. So
that's awesome.
yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure both of you could talk all day. Let's share, want to talk kind of a little bit about next steps and then open it up in case you have questions, because probably Adam and Dylan have responses to that. So just quick, you talk and you want to talk.
Sure, I can take it. So we had the pilot program in place for no more than 10, let's go ahead a little bit. When coming up, we are getting ready to present to sophomores and juniors on May 10th, and we're going to continue the pilot. We're again going to open it up to see what interest there is. We want to make sure that we don't grow too quickly with this. There needs to be a system of support. It's got to be integrated in the works that they're doing. And we want to make sure, we did a lot of coaching with school counselors and the students, call all the admissions officers. If we grow too quickly, we worry that we could set this up not to be successful. We're going to be presenting at Mastery's annual symposium in October. So again, a chance to work with some other educators who are doing this work as well. And we're continuing the work of looking at how the portrait of the learner actually shows up, rubber hits the road in classes. And so this year we've trained all teachers through common planning time sessions on reflective protocols on the portrait of the learner, so that students can start to do what Dylan and Adam did in building their mastery transcript. Look at the unit they just did and say, where did I connect with the POL on that? So it has an actual tangible connection to the curriculum, and they can start to draw some of the reflections you need in order to build this kind of a transcript. We're looking at formalizing a pathway of different learning experiences, 9 through 12, that would be highlight moments. For instance, the science symposium, the civics project that takes place in 11th grade. There are a lot of really meaningful learning experiences that directly connect to the portrait of the learner. We want to articulate those so students know either key options for reflection, and then continue to this idea of developing new metrics of success. We're big believers, as we collaborate across Mercer, we're big believers in the process about all of this. There's proof of concept in showing you a product that directly aligns with the portrait of the learner in our vision. That's great. However, the process was really valuable. Sitting and meeting with Dylan and having him go through all of his life experiences and decide what is the best representation of who he is, how he can frame that in order to share it with another audience, how it connects with schoolwork, it's powerful. And I think I could see Dylan getting a better sense of himself through that work. Meeting with Adam, who had such passion for this, I can remember saying, I have to go home and put dinner on the table, Adam. You have to leave my office. He was so passionate. He went out, he advocated and met with his teachers. You'll notice on his student work examples, he has teacher comments that go with it. He went and set up Zoom conversations on his own. We were Zooming with admissions counselors, and he was sharing his mastery just the way Dylan did at job interviews. We saw the sense of passion, that sense of the student statement of, I can innovate, I can show who I am, I can break the system and do it in a really productive, exciting way, shown through. Adam sent his mastery learning record as a sole educational record. that was the way they looked and said whether or not he's going to be a match. And we heard acceptance after acceptance after acceptance. Not surprised because his passion really speaks through the work. So we are believers in exploring this idea of personal narrative, the idea that the story we tell ourselves about ourselves is maybe the most important thing we can cultivate pre-K through 12 in this district. So we have students getting a diploma knowing not only that they're qualified for school or job or service, but they know who they are, what their strengths are, they benefit by having around them, what they can bring to a team, what they need from a team, what they can do for a community, what they're passionate about, what problems they can solve. And we feel like this is an avenue to direct us that way.
And I would add to it, it's not just for college admissions, obviously that's a platform it's built, like what Dylan said, using it for a job interview, it's intended to follow them and be a part of kind of who they are. And it's their story articulated digitally, right? They're holding a lot of all of work that they did too, but internships, post-secondary planning, whatever their futures look like, the hope is through that process and having that product will help them in kind of whatever avenue they choose beyond Mendon-Upton.
I have a question for Dylan and Adam. So John just mentioned sense of self and being able to develop that. How much do you think that the mastery transcript process helped you to develop your sense of self?
Well, I think that when I was doing the mastery transcript, like actively doing it, I didn't think that it was really helping me to express myself anymore. I thought that I was already aware of everything. Because I was reflecting on it and just creating like eloquent little piece of myself. But after I was, when I looked at it, it was like something for me to be proud of, and it was something more concrete and solidified. It was like all the thoughts are in my head, they're all there, and I know that they're all there, but I didn't have much in terms of concrete evidence of what I could prove to that thought or anything, and it just helped me to like organize everything together and actually like to see what I can produce, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I agree with Adam in that just like putting, you already have these experiences, like with Adam having DECA, baseball, and just the internship program, putting everything all together really gives you a sense of accomplishment and saying that these things I accomplished are very helpful to the community in the ways that Adam with the internship program are helping special needs kids in our school. And with me, with my Cambodia trip, I was helping, so in our trip, we had one of our experiences being, we actually played volleyball with the locals there. And I feel like that experience, putting everything together really showed me like how impactful I can be to others and not just myself, how impactful I can be to really the whole world and how I can put myself out there. Just putting it all together really gave me a sense of a huge accomplishment of showing that myself, I actually am really, I can do this. Like I can go into the future and I can build myself, I can accomplish things that I won't be able to think that I can accomplish. And it just gives you a really sense of achievement.
Do you think that any students within Mendon-Upton would struggle with creating a mastery transcript?
I feel like they could, but it's just like, we did have a little bit of trouble finding evidence, but once you just piece to piece, grab everything from freshman year to senior year, like in my freshman year, I was a part of this team called Learning Adventure Team with John and Marianne. And with that, I was able to piece by piece put together. So I had that piece of evidence. And then in my sophomore year, what I did, I had Portrait of a Learner Scholars. Junior year, what I do, I helped with community service. I was part of a church group that helped with community service throughout Upton, YNIA. And then senior year, I helped with the community and went to Cambodia. So it's just piecing little tiny things together and just collaborating and put it all together. It is struggling at first, but once you have it all together, it gets really easy.
Yeah, I think that it could go 50-50. I think that there will be some people that have a hard time with it and some people that will thrive with it. And what I mean by that is, I think I have a lot of friends like myself who would have done really, really well with this. I just don't think they trusted it or knew too much about it, because I mean, it was the pilot group and everything. I wanted to go in it. But I think that there's a lot of people out there who, especially in this school, who reflect their knowledge in their everyday lives, not as opposed to as their lives within school. I think that people with I think everyone could benefit from the mastery transcript, regardless of if they have like a 4.6 or like a 2.1. I think everyone can get something out of it, whether they use it or not. But I would say like personally, I'm a big advocate for it. So I think that like everyone will benefit from it, and it'll be harder for some people to find evidence because most of it is within their work. But if like I had a pretty easy time looking into all of my like achievements from the past and all the work that I've created and produced and linking that to a competency or something. So I think it really just takes a little bit more of time and a little bit more critical thought to just be like, what did this really mean to me? How did this impact me? And how did it like change my life in this area? And being like observant of that like course of action and how it changed your life and shaped it into something else. And while that might take some more time for others than it will for others, I think that people, and especially students here, would be able to find that reasoning and that correlation between the two, and they could create a mastery transcript as well.
So the bandwidth that it takes to put these together, it sounds like it's a lot. So how many do you think we're capable at this point of taking on in a year?
That's a great question. I think if we continue to treat it the way we did for this first group of brave people who raised their hand, it would be a lot. I think one of the things we've been working on, we've had 2 lead learner workshops on this, we've been meeting with departments on it. We're trying to find the natural opportunities that already exist in the school, and we haven't identified all of them yet. However, we had up Dylan's Portrait of a Learner Scholars profile. We've gone from 2 pilot groups of that to now every freshman in the school will have one of those at the end of this year. So in doing that, they've already begun the reflection on the Portrait of the Learner. They've written a personal statement. And so you have some of the architecture coming directly out of classes already. I can tell you in our English classes, there are opportunities where they are writing reflective essays about key moments in their lives. So there are chances to integrate the work that we're already doing. And when I talk about finding the paths on the journey, the stopping points where students can reflect, this is what I mean. Integrating it so it's not a pullout, it doesn't feel like something different. And looking at the opportunities. Is advisory a place where we're going to work on this? Does it happen in another venue? And I think that's why we want to go slow with the potential of going fast.
Yeah, I was going to ask that as well. It's like, I was so impressed with that panel that was put up downstairs last year for the Portrait of the Learner Scholars and all the work that came out of that and what those descriptions of each individual looked like. And you could read them and wow, chills went up your spine. So that seems to me that the Portrait of the Learner work that you guys have been doing feeds right naturally into the mastery transcript.
Yeah, and kudos to Lauren Blackburn and Kate Reardon, who this year developed freshman seminar. It's an entire course devoted to the Portrait of the Learner for freshmen. They get a half year of understanding what it's all about. And pull it back all the way to the last Inspired Learning Day, where you had our youngest elementary school students picking a sticker and saying, putting it on and saying, I'm an inspired innovator, I am a solution seeker, I'm a skillful collaborator. I think that's part of what we're really excited about too, is when you talk about what's it take to build these things, it's not a high school endeavor, it's a Marista endeavor and opportunity for us. And we've been really impressed with the work that's happening at the other buildings and looking for ways that we can build off of that too.
Can you share some of the feedback you've gotten from the admissions counselors? I'm curious to know what the colleges are thinking about this.
Absolutely. A range of feedback from, oh yes, we're super familiar with it. Yep, great, thanks. Getting ready to move on. Like they don't need to speak with us about it. To having no clue about it. I spoke to one of the admissions officers for Adam and they didn't know about it at all. And so we have been really impressed with how detail oriented every single admissions office has been. When they call us back, they have the student's profile and application materials up in front of us. They would get into the mastery transcript with us on the phone and allow us to walk them through. At times we heard from one of Adam's, and we said, that's great, where are the grades? And so then we talked about, well, this is in place of the grades, and they came to an understanding about that. There were a wide range of feedback, but all of them engaged with us. We'd heard from people sometimes too. They would be looking, we'd explain the advanced credits and say, oh, you have skillful collaborator. That's great. That's one of our focal points this year. We're looking for people who work well as members of teams. So we learned about how they prioritize and the things that are behind the scenes that maybe they don't publish in a typical admissions session. So
some of the larger state universities would acknowledge the receipt, but we couldn't get to speak to someone personally about it, but all of the other ones we had, I was shocked at how many physical admissions reps we got to speak to. And honestly, to get on the phone, like I said earlier, and be able to help tell the stories of our students, right? We spend our whole time here in Mendon-Upton learning about our kids, cultivating our kids, helping them build this skill set, and then we send a traditional transcript, which we know doesn't tell their story. So not only getting to send it, but physically getting to talk to someone about what our students have and how they can meaningfully contribute to the college and university campuses was just really exciting.
That's really good point. So you got to talk to people not within that transcript sort team.
Yeah.
About what they felt about the transcript.
Yeah, 100%.
So what are the other barriers that are in the way of rolling this kind of program out today?
Well, they eliminated a big barrier by providing the learning record. It would have been a huge barrier to say, choose the transcript or not, because you can't send both with the old model. Having that out of the way, we feel like we have a lot of opportunity now. Now, the key thing is to make sure that whatever is submitted is the best example of the student's work and the best representation of themselves. And so I think it's about building a feedback loop, a lot of hours of coaching. They would submit things, we provide feedback on a Google Doc, providing that infrastructure where they're getting good feedback and making the updates on the work, and ensuring that they've had enough high quality prompting and reflecting that it represents their whole story, that it's robust enough that if someone looks at it, they say, yes, this is going to be a bonus, not I thought you were going to get accepted and now I'm not so sure. And we felt really confident in all of the materials submitted by that six. So an obstacle though is definitely being able to scale it and doing just what Sean said. But that's where our head's been the whole time, to being really thoughtful. That rubber meets the road mentality of making sure this isn't something different. It's just a unifier that pulls all the pieces together.
Would you change the timeline based on the amount of time? This is clearly a very time-intensive process. So is that something that you're kind of looking at tweaking?
Yeah, I think the timeline, the self-reflection process and the idea of the skills that kids are building needs to start right in elementary school. In terms of our pilot next year, we're rolling it out to all juniors. Again, we'll start this year with them. So that's a rush, we understand that, but to all sophomores as well. So we'll kind of tier that process a little bit so that they have some additional time to be working on it. Because it does get super busy with October deadlines, right? It's a pretty quick process. I think for us and what we know and having gone through it, we'll be able to kind of guide the kids through a more streamlined process, hopefully, in terms of selection of evidence and building that, which will make it feel a little better, but we don't want to take that opportunity away from current juniors. We want to be able to still open that up. But I think, yes, it needs to be a K-12 journey. It needs to be a 9-12 journey, but we're slowly moving it, so absolutely.
Is there an intention to couple this with how we report student progress throughout the year as well? So wrapping some of these competencies into cards, maybe building a portfolio for the students to maybe help with that process? Is that a plan
Just
for
to
this?
spring off that, how exactly do the competency levels map to courses completed and stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's not a direct correlation right now, right? And so we have our traditional curriculum, we have our traditional grades, and we have the portrait of a learner competencies. So we have intentionally not designed a rubric to measure the portrait of a learner competencies with the hope, the vision that we don't take portrait of a learner and the competencies and put it in the same box of school that we have taken everything else through, that we are really able to create a journey for students where they're reflective, they develop a strong personal narrative, because we are believers that if every student left Mendon-Upton with a strong personal narrative about the skills they have related to the portrait of a learner competencies, regardless of where they fell on the proficiency scale of each of them, and we know we have to capture proficiency at some point through evidence, we'll get there, but that they're set up for success. So rather than it being something that is done to them and graded traditionally by teachers, we think there's a lot of other unique ways that we can really help students capture their own success and provide the evidence for it. And so everything with Mastery has aligned to that for us in terms of students building, capturing their strengths, having different opportunities to pull experiences. If you look at Adam and Dylan's transcripts, they don't have the same experiences at all on right? Their courses are articulated there, but their experiences both in and out of school are very different. And so trying to honor the individual in this process too. So 10 years down the road, might we be in a different place in terms of competency-based learning? I would love to be. We're just not there right now.
Just to add this in too, so having a portrait of a learner or a vision of the graduate is a part of the accreditation process. And so being able to regularly measure and report back individual and school-wide feedback is a goal we're working towards. As part of the 2020 standards, that was an update. NEASC, however, has given us a lot of freedom in how to do that. They have a rubric for school reflection on your progress, where on the far left side of the rubric, it's not doing it. And then you have thinking about it. And then the next line up on the proficiency scale is experimenting. You get to living it, and you think, oh, living it has got to be the far right side of the rubric. It's actually not. They go one step over and they have shifting the paradigm. And so we've been in regular conversations with NEASC, believing that this is getting to the heart of what having a vision of the graduate standards is all about, and taking some chances and doing it differently. We absolutely, as a guiding principle, will not rank and sort our kids on whether or not they are global citizens or skillful collaborators. We believe in the value of the individual, and at this table, in this room, if you looked at the skill sets that we represent in the portrait of a learner, they're different. Some of us are inspired innovators, some of us are the communicators, some of us are the mindful learners. That's what makes a community, that's what makes an organization work, that's what makes us stronger. Having baseline competencies, getting students regular, frequent opportunities to practice and get feedback, but then embracing the fact that each of our stories can be different and empowering them to pursue their differences and build their strengths is something we're really excited about.
Yeah, and also one thing that Mr. Moran said is it's all about differences. What every college and college admissions is looking for is how different one person can be from another, because you don't really want to get this two pretty similar people. Like if grade wise, class wise, oh, okay, they'll just do the same thing. They're looking for differences, which is what I think Mastery Transcript provides beautifully to these colleges and the college admissions. It shows them a different perspective. Instead of grading wise, it shows them experiences and how different, like especially Adam's and I's experiences are. Me going from Portrait of a Learner and Learning Adventure Team to Adam's work in DECA and into the internship program. So the differences can be very extreme, which can really put out to the college admissions, okay, I'm starting to like this guy now because he's different from every other person here. He has a different story, he can provide a different aspect and different positive manner towards our school, and which gets them to like us a little bit more. And then they talk to Ms. Moran, Mr. Clemens more about what it's really about, and then they make their final decision. And we, Adam and I, both have gotten a lot of acceptances, which we think that because of this Mastery Transcript have provided us to the admissions counselors, it shows us how different we are from everybody else, which I think provides very extreme.
You've been really generous with your time, and we don't want to take any more. Before we wrap, I do want to say it's College Acceptance Day, so we have the colleges we got accepted to, and you see 2 colleges represented in what they're wearing today. We're super proud of the options they had, the work they put into it, but we're especially proud of these 2 young people and all of the people in the pilot, and that they took a chance, tried something new, and made the most out of it. And we're just really grateful to work with such amazing people with you, and I love that you call this John and Mary Ann. I feel like you're already graduated too. We're proud of them, and we appreciate the chance to share tonight. We can certainly take more questions, but we know we have a full agenda.
It would be good to have a list of colleges in the consortium.
Absolutely. Sure.
If that is on the website, then
It is, we can absolutely.
you can publish that.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of, yeah.
It's growing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good job, guys. Thank you. Good
Okay. Next up, school counselor update. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
stepping up. I'm Meredith Hepez. I'm one of the school counselors at Nipmuc.
And I'm Allison Town, school counselor at Nipmuc.
So kind of along the same lines of mastery transcript, we're really working on refining the way that our students represent themselves and that as a school we represent our students in terms of, for a majority of students, college admissions, but, for wherever they're headed next, yeah. So we are, it's not working, kind of in an attempt to represent our students kind of more realistically and more positively across the board. The school counselors are proposing that we eliminate the reporting of an exact class rank for our students. And so I know you guys have had access to this document that we put together. We've kind of put together the background information, some concerns that have come up, and then kind of what we're looking to move towards in kind of replacing this whole system that emphasizes class rank. So just some quick background is that our current procedure is that we have a weighted class rank where students get quality points based on their grade and the level class that they are taking. And then we have this grade point average, those are put in order, and then the students are ranked in order of that weighted GPA. Then we also report an unweighted GPA out of 100 points that's just an average of the grades that we give 0 to 100. We've been talking about this for a long time. Allison and I have been here for a while, and we seem to pretty much talk about it every year. And after the last few years of with COVID, this entire shift on college admissions and how we're reporting and reflecting our students' success here, we said it's time. And we have had enough students in our offices crying, stressed out, so anxious about their rank in the class, how they compare to their peers, that it kind of became something that we just said this isn't good for our students anymore. And so that was kind of the jumping off point for us, was students' mental health. And then as we started researching, these other elements were coming up. And we're just kind of finding that the class rank is just an outdated statistic that we don't really need anymore. It falls in line with the MURSD's vision, the 5-year plan that we're at the end of now, but there was this emphasis on expanding the definition of success, and we feel like the class rank really kind of stifles a lot of that expansion by ranking our students. So in general, our proposal would be that for the incoming freshman class next year, class of 2027, we would begin using a new system of calculating GPA and not using class rank anymore as something that we calculate and put forth for our students. We have done a lot of research about this, and I think one of the most important things that we did was really look around at other high schools in Massachusetts and to see, that class rank really isn't something that has been important for quite some time in a lot of these top schools on this list. And this is by far not an extensive list. I think we have found that it was probably more than 50% of high schools in Massachusetts don't report class rank anymore. These are just the ones that we have made contact with, confirmed, and we know that they're not using it anymore. And then you see the year that they decided to eliminate class rank. So some of these schools have been not using class rank for a really long time. And from what we hear, it seems to be working out pretty well for them. Less stress for their students, and they're still able to represent their students in, an appropriate way that gives them every opportunity after high school.
One of the main things that goes with our current rank is that our rank is weighted. So when we have students ranked, it takes into account their AP classes, their honors classes. That's the only way that we represent rigor of coursework to colleges at this point, is through their class rank. So when students have a GPA on their transcript, it's just a straight average. And then colleges have to go through and kind of weight it based on their algorithm or kind of re-weight it. Whereas many high schools, and we have found that the majority of high schools aren't doing class rank, those high schools are representing the rigor of coursework in a weighted GPA. So our proposal would include, if we eliminate the exact class rank, which contains that weight, we would change it so that it shifts the rigor of coursework into a weighted 4.0 GPA, which is more in line with what colleges are looking for and more in line with what other high schools are doing as well.
And so we've come up with a 4.0 scale that we're pretty sure about at this point. We're working with Liz Black to kind of run some numbers and make sure that it represents students in the best way possible before we share that with everybody. But it basically is using 4.0 as a base, giving 0.5 extra points for an honors class and 1 point extra for an AP class, which is pretty standard among what colleges do when they recalculate GPAs with what they get on a transcript. And then alongside that weighted GPA, we would also be able to report for each graduating class the distribution of GPAs. So without giving every student an exact specific rank, we'd be able to show kind of the distribution on a graph. And we have looked into how some other schools do this, and we're able to find that some schools use an actual graph. So they would show, 7 students in the class have an average of 4.0 to 4.3, 22 students, you can see it kind of is like a bell curve. Some schools just report the bell curve. Other high schools they just kind of write it out. 19 students fell within the 25th percentile, so that when they're looking at the weighted GPA of a specific student they're evaluating, they can see sort of where they fall in the class, but it wouldn't be something that literally puts one student above another and rank them in that way. This is also something that would not be calculated until the end of junior year when students are ready to apply to college, and then that would be it. So it wouldn't be this every year. Now the freshmen are wondering, well, what's my class rank? Based on only the 7 classes I took this year, they're so into it, and it's meaningless at this point for a 9th grader to know their class rank. So some schools are using just the written out version. For example, Westwood is a school that sends with each transcript, they send this chart, which has, again, the distribution, and they actually highlight where the specific student falls in here. And then we have a school, Dover-Sherburne, that just publishes the highest GPA in the class and kind of leaves the rest to, just showing what the student's GPA is that they're looking at. So lots of different ways to report it, and we haven't really decided what would be best for NITMUC, but we're kind of in that process so that we can make sure that we are giving students every opportunity, definitely not taking any opportunities away from them, and kind of making for a more kind of stable environment in school, so that this class rank statistic is not kind of like at the forefront of everyone's minds. And like you just heard a lot about, the mastery transcript is another way that kind of supports this shift of highlighting individual students instead of how students compare to each other. You heard Adam and Dylan say, like, we are different students. But if you looked at their transcripts, they might have taken all the same classes, but they got different experiences out of them. And so we want to make sure that we are highlighting students' strengths. For some students, academics are their strengths. We want to make sure that we're highlighting that. But for other students, we really don't want to place them below their peers just because, they maybe haven't excelled as extensively in their academics. So we feel like the class rank kind of limits that. And so what we're proposing is more focused on the individual student. We've thought of kind of a lot of scenarios that people might be concerned about, because as counselors, we were concerned about them too. And so we can just kind of run through them really quickly, and then I'm sure there's lots of more specific questions. For valedictorian and salutatorian, eliminating class rank doesn't necessarily have to eliminate valedictorian and salutatorian. Lots of schools on the list that you saw still have them, and then some schools don't. And like any new process, there might be some growing pains, but for example, like in Hopkinton, because they've been doing this for so long, nobody even questions where the valedictorian and the salutatorian come from. They just understand that we only know the top 2 students, and that's it. We don't know any other rank, and they've never had problems with that. We talked a lot about class rank and college admissions, and from what we have heard from a broad range of college admissions officers is that if you give a class rank, they look at it. If you don't give a class rank, they don't look at it, and that's basically what they do. So we have, you have access to this other document that has responses from a wide array of colleges.
And most college admissions are actually saying that most high schools are not reporting rank. So when a college admissions officer is looking at a transcript, seeing rank on there is more uncommon than not seeing rank. So it's just interesting to see when you look through their perspectives, So if, again, like Meredith said, if they have class rank, they look at it. If not, they don't. One thing that they did say is that they do like to see some kind of distribution graph so that they can, even if it's not an exact rank or a decile rank or something, they can kind of just see where grades fall in the class, which is why we wanted to include that in ours as well.
Sometimes there are scholarships, well, in the past, there have been scholarships that are based on class rank. Colleges are moving away from that at this point. We give one example here. UNH used to have specific class rank in the description of their scholarship, and now they don't mention it at all. They don't even say, if there's no class rank, this, and this, they just don't talk about it at all. So this is just kind of the trend that we're seeing. And like I mentioned before, especially over the last few years, college admissions really had to, it was kind of turned upside down because of COVID and not being able to access all the same information about students. Students weren't able to take the SATs for a while, so they just said, hey, we don't need SATs. And they still were getting, the same caliber of applicants. They were still looking at, the freshmen that have completed the first year without SATs, and they were kind of maintaining those high standards that they were looking for. And so, class rank is kind of right along there. It's not really a good description for anyone. Maybe if you're in the top 10%, but that's only 10% of students, and the other 90% have a rank lower than that. And so we're really looking for the best way to represent our students. And that's pretty much what we have, but we know there's probably lots of questions and ideas and feedback, so we are ready to hear that and answer questions.
Questions, thoughts?
But I'm gonna wait.
So it sounds like you're still kind of in the process of figuring out what this really is going to look like.
Yeah, and we have a lot of ideas. We have, like I said, a 4.0 scale pretty much worked out. We have to figure out the logistics of getting that into Power School and, how it's going to report. And for a little while, we're going to have some students on one scale and some students on another scale so that, we have to work all of that out. But we're definitely using schools in the area as our guide to kind of see what they do and picking and choosing basically what we like and what works best, so that we can kind of create something that's individual to Nipmuc that represents our students the best way. But we definitely would be ready for the incoming freshman class.
So I guess the question is, what do you need from us right now? Yeah, it sounds like you've done a lot of great work. You've got a lot of pieces here. You guys can ask all the questions you want to ask, but it sounds like we still have some work to do to define what this really looks like and what we're proposing to do.
For sure. I think one of our big concerns is how this is going to get, beyond the people in this room. And we know that there might be some strong opinions one way or the other. And I guess that's kind of our, biggest concern right now.
It would interest me because the list of schools you have up there, whether it's Hopkinton, Bromfield, Sherborne, these are all very good schools, all right? They've gone through this process already. They have parents that care about their students and student performance, so it'd be interesting to know how they handled it as well, because they probably have gone through these. Doesn't sound like they're new things we're dealing with.
Sure. Yeah.
It's one of the concerns that we were talking about with respect to this was that is a list of prominent schools in the state of Massachusetts, which begs the question, do those schools have relationships with colleges which obviate the need for the class rank? So there's a lot of those questions going on. What are the dynamics within those schools? Does Mendon-Upton fit within that category and therefore have the contacts with the universities and the schools that are expected? And I think we talked that out quite a bit. And from my point of view, this coupled with the master transcript gives us the flexibility to think about a superior way to demonstrate that our kids are excellent candidates for the colleges across the country. So instead of thinking of this as a couple of isolated changes, master transcript and ranking changes, we can think about this more as a comprehensive way that we could start advertising our kids to the next stage of their lives, whether it's work or college or whatever it is. So if we could think more on that line of thinking and then come up with a comprehensive plan, I think that's much better to have a conversation with the community about. Eric sent us all a note about this, and he's got some very passionate opinions about it. And it's too bad that he couldn't be here, because I would really like to have that discussion. But I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback from this. So we have to be prepared.
And I think because we've been thinking about this for so long, like we've kind of gone through all the what ifs in our minds. And I think the way that I'm trying to look at it is that we're not taking something away, we're changing the system and we're just doing something different. And so in my mind, having a 4.0 weighted GPA along with the mastery transcript that can tell the more narrative, the student's individual story, like that's a much better way to represent a student's success here and potential for success in the future than by saying, the student got better grades than this student in all the classes.
Larger percentage of our student population as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, though, to think about having this changing class rank just not be an isolated thing that we're doing, and more of here's the umbrella of all the values that our school has and the direction we want to go in, and removing class rank and then putting in the weighted 4.0 GPA. That's part of that under that umbrella. But I think we have to be mindful on how we communicate out to the community and to families.
There's also something fascinating that Marianne and John went over, which is they were calling up individual admissions officers, asking them what impact this had on their perspective. And man, I don't know how we do that more comprehensively in the future, but if you look at that list of schools that you had up there are people contacting those officers all the time. They're always, I can see in some of those cases, they have the college fairs right on the school grounds. And that happens for a lot of private schools as well. I'd like to see some more attention, either from us or from the colleges that our parents are interested in. I'm not even sure how to quantify that. This is all coming. But I would love to see some more interaction between our school and the colleges to show the value of our kids.
And we do have
a lot of those colleges are making decisions just based on the school.
Yeah, sometimes, and along with like our communication with colleges, we do have admissions reps that come in for in-person meetings. They do presentations for our students, they check in with us. So we do have that kind of in-person interaction, and they are chomping at the bit to come in and talk to our students, marketing for them, but it's also a good opportunity for us. So we definitely have that access
That's part
to
of the story
schools.
too. That should be part of the comprehensive plan.
Well, and the whole point that this is a shift to a paradigm that most colleges are using right now is an important piece of that information as well. I can tell you I'm 100% on board with this shift. And I think the document that you guys have put together is incredibly comprehensive, and it's really a helpful tool in terms of communicating to the community why this shift might be happening. It's not just something that arbitrarily was decided upon. There's a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of thought that's gone into this decision. So hopefully maybe we can turn community members back to watching the YouTube of this meeting if they have questions, because this is very well articulated here as to why this is the right move for the community.
I would agree, and I would also even add, just in terms of, I think you could add to this document how class rank can be detrimental in some cases, because I think when you have and I don't know how much NITMA particularly, but when you have you're not comparing NITMA to a more competitive school where you're going to have kids who are bunched up. So it may, the straight number in class rank may actually hurt a student. So I think that is something to take into account. But I mean, ultimately, it's kind of whether you're doing rank or you're doing a weighted GPA, it's basically the same thing. So it's not really that big of a shift.
Yeah, I think that the weighted GPA puts more of an emphasis on students striving to attain grades and sort of competing with themselves in a sense of, I'm going to do my best to get these good grades, and that will affect my weighted GPA as opposed to competing with each other.
So I'll be honest, when I got the email the morning, this is mostly I was skeptical at first. But as I read through the document, I definitely am much more on board. I think moving to a weighted GPA is, I mean, regardless of what we do with class rank, I think that is a worthwhile change to make, in and of itself, for exactly the reason that you just stated. But the more I thought about it, and especially with the examples that you have at the bottom, the way other schools present their transcripts with class rank distribution and stuff like that. I mean, it is functionally the same thing. I know very few college admissions that use class rank, I imagine, are differentiating between someone who finishes 6th and someone who finishes 10th, at the top 10% of the school or whatever. It's functionally, it's something that's, better for the student's mental health to bucket them in some way, whether it's deciles or quintiles, whatever, you have the graph ends up breaking down. It seems like it's a worthwhile thing to consider.
So will we still do the top 10%? Because that's something the school celebrates.
So that's kind of part of what we're still working out. But we know that the top 10% is something like that, and we have been talking about what we could do, kind of not like instead of that, or to honor some sort of specific group of students, but in colleges, everyone has the opportunity to graduate with honors or with like cum laude or summa cum laude or things like that. So we're maybe looking to honor individual students for reaching certain either milestones or status or something like that. We also know that with the schools who don't report their rank in the top 10%, they still are able to participate in like community events and things like that, like the Chamber of Commerce things and stuff like that. So those are all kind of the minor details that we're working on.
If you think about the best illustration of this is if all of your students fit within a grade of 99 out of 100, then the one who's a fraction of a point off would be student number 100. That doesn't fairly represent that student at all. So I think that's what we have to think about when we talk about rank.
Yeah, and so we had kind of picked, just as we're testing out, grade scales and things like that, picked a student who in the past has come, was one of my students and came and said, well, I think something's wrong with my class rank because I shouldn't be this low because I have a 90 whatever GPA. And I showed her like, you do, but these other students all have that GPA plus, a 10th of a point or 100th of a point or something like that.
Or another AP
and if you back in sophomore year, take that one AP class that you could have, that can kind of put you behind others for the rest of your time here. And she was pretty disappointed in that. So I used that as a sample student. And then when we used our, the scale that we're thinking about, like her weighted GPA was like a 3.9 or something based on her, the grades that she received in her classes, the college prep level through the AP level. And that's a better representation of who she is as a student. That if I'm looking to see what the student is like and who they are, why do I care about the students next to her? I'm just looking at her and I want to know what she's capable of, and that's what she's capable of. So it makes a lot of sense for us and for students.
I think it tells, again, we're talking about how we represent ourselves as a district to colleges. I think it tells a better story about the district as a whole too, if you're reporting within a distribution chart, to kind of show if you're scoring in the top 10th percentile with a skewed distribution towards one side versus a perfect little curve. I think that tells a different story than just you're ranked 16th out of, so I really like this idea for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, with this sample one, you can see like the GPAs are skewed towards the top. So
we're also hoping that this change will shift maybe what students choose to take in terms of classes, because I know that we've met with plenty of students who say, AP Macro is the only class offered to sophomores, it's the only AP class offered to sophomores, and I need to take that because I need to get a head start on class rank. Which hearing that from a freshman, thinking about their, like, and I'm like, are you interested in economics? And they're like, I mean, maybe. Like, oh,
They say the
okay.
same thing in regards to weighted GPA.
They could, but I think that with rank, it's more about, I need to beat out that person next to me who I know is also taking AP Macro. Whereas when colleges have class rank, they're looking at, this student is 12th and this student is 15th. Whereas if they're looking at GPAs, they're not necessarily putting two transcripts next to each other and saying, this student has a 4.25 GPA and this student has a 4.31. It just makes it less of a stark comparison.
So will you show the distribution of students when they're in freshman and sophomore year?
That would just be after junior year.
So basically what you're eliminating is showing anybody where they theoretically fit in within the distribution. Whether you use rank or distribution, it's
That's part of it. Yeah.
because just rank is all based on weighted GPA.
Yeah.
We're gonna implement weighted GPA, which I agree with, but I think you're still gonna.
It's also less granular, right?
Yeah, I understand. I agree with that. But you're still gonna get those students that are like, I need to be in the upper piece. I don't think you'll ever.
That race for like, I need to take 12 APs is
Yeah.
not
You're
gonna
still
go
gonna
away.
get-
Sure.
But they also, two things is that they won't know who else is in that range unless they're all, sharing specific, GPAs. But
I'm
it
gonna
won't
say
be,
that
it won't be
I
published. It won't be published. But also, the 4.0 scale that we're looking to move to is, the standard college prep level class is the baseline and everything else moves up. So you could get a 4.0 being in the college prep level classes. And then you would just get that little bit more weight for the other classes. So we can really say, you can take the classes that you're interested in, that you're passionate about, that you're considering as in the future, and you can still do really well in them, and your GPA can still be, an impressive GPA, even if it's.
That's the difference right there. Are you more interested in building out your mastery transcript? Or are you more interested in building out your GPA? And that's really the choice that this gives. Now you've got a person who can say, I want to do what's right for me. I want to build up my career, my resume, my interests, versus I've got a dictated set of classes I need to make the top GPA, which I think is very, very positive.
I still think you're gonna find both pieces, but I think you're gonna get some good feedback from the parents now because they understand and know that, we're thinking about this and the potential of rolling it out and what it could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now's the time you're gonna get that feedback. I'm just gonna say, high schoolers know how to work the game. Okay, let's be honest. Honestly, you want to give some of this to somebody to figure it out. You know exactly what I'm saying. They're gonna be a group of them. They're gonna work one way. A group of them are gonna work another. I think giving them opportunity to showcase themselves in different ways is hugely beneficial. I truly do, because not everybody learns the same way, represents themselves the same way, all those kinds of things. So I think it's huge. But I think you're still gonna get those subset of
course, yeah.
students who are gonna work in. They're gonna know that they've got to do certain things in order to progress in certain ways and what they want to do. So.
I feel like this is also an opportunity because we don't want school to be the game, right? It's about like the learning in the future and everything that we're talking about with mastery learning and our vision. So I think when we make these shifts and procedures or whatever it is that moves us in that direction, that's where our conversations can start to shift with time too. And I really appreciate all of the hard work you put into the research behind it. And I know a lot of schools have done this a while ago, but I think it's 100%, and I said this in my notes, I'm 100% in favor of this. And I know we have finer details that you'll work through and get more information, but I'm really excited that it's the right thing for our students here. So I really appreciate it.
Not to mention the amount of work they're signing up for to keep two different grading systems.
Yeah, it is a transition, right, for a number of years, and anytime you make changes like that, but it's well worth it in the end, and people will forget this conversation at some point, because it'll be the new way that things are here at now. So,
Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our student comments. we'll, move
right.
on.
So the
Super
next
excited.
item. Dia's gonna help me out here. You're gonna help me, and we're gonna maybe embarrass you, Phil.
Oh,
a
look
little
at that,
bit
that's
more.
great.
So I didn't know you were gonna talk about it earlier, but we want to recognize you. So I looked back and tell me if I'm wrong, but you've been on the school committee since 2011?
I
That's
have.
what, yeah, so that is quite some time, over a decade of dedicated service. So we were trying to think, and you can probably tell us all the stories maybe after the meeting. But we want to congratulate you for that. Thank you for your dedication, your contributions. And when you think about it, overall of that time, those contributions are, obviously, everyone sees the public meetings, but it's all a lot of the behind the scenes work that goes into being a school committee member. So it is lots of negotiations meetings, it is budget meetings and subcommittees and policy if you do that one year, and then it's, responding to questions and feedback and hiring superintendents and evaluating superintendents, which we'll do later. So there's a lot to it, and being representative of the community. So I will say, obviously I've been in the district for close to 10 years or so, but in this role, what I've been really appreciative and honestly is just the insight and your willingness for me to, and this past year when you've been chair and I'm like, hey, this is going on and can we talk through this, and your ability to give me some past history and to listen and provide guidance and have someone to bounce off some ideas that are going on. I've really appreciated that as well. I know sometimes we don't always see the lasting impact of our work, but I can truly say that you have had it as being a member for so long on this committee. So we are going to publicly embarrass you and recognize you. And we're gonna take a nice picture with you too. So how about you go right in front of there?
Look at
And
that.
Dia,
Forgot to wear a suit.
hand that to him.
See, she's like dressed up a little bit more than that short
That would have been really
sweatshirt.
gonna be our representative. Want to turn it? Want to turn it? Wait,
Thank you.
wait, hold on.
Uh-oh. Look, it says Phil.
All right, now we can clap again. Thank you. I'm gonna keep moving on, unless you have more words of wisdom you want to share on
Nope,
that? No, okay.
I'm not going anywhere. My phone will still work if you have a question.
So I also want to recognize that we're fortunate to be here on a night that it is the National School Principals Day. So I'm going to read what I wrote up here so I don't miss anything, but I want to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude and admiration for all of our principals in the district. I sent out a tweet today. I thought it was very clever. It said, hey, no, what did I say? Hey.
I'm going to find it for you.
Hey, you. We have the best principals. How about you? Like a cheer. I don't know if it read as a cheer, but I have lots of responses out on the web. But we do have the best principals here. As you're probably well aware, but I'd like to remind the community and everyone, being a school principal is a demanding job. It requires a unique set of skills and leadership qualities. It's a challenging role, and it often requires balancing competing priorities and navigating complex situations. One of the reasons I think our principals are so exceptional is because their unwavering dedication to our students, staff, and community. And when they come to decisions, it's always all about students, and that's in all the conversations that we're always having. Whether it's developing innovative programs that you're hearing about here for student learning, or creating a safe and nurturing environment for our students, or providing emotional supports to students in need, or maybe to me sometimes. They're always there to ensure that our students receive the support that they need to thrive and meet our mission. I would say another reason why principals are the best here is their commitment to their staff. They understand school is only as strong as its teachers and support staff, and they do work tirelessly to support and empower their teams. We're always looking for that lens as well, of how we can better support our staff. We know it's challenging times in education, and it's always in the forefront of their minds. So we're lucky to have them as leaders in our district, and I just want to publicly thank all of them for their hard work and dedication on this very special day. All right.
Lots of celebrations today. Moving on, I'm going to talk about, so the MUCP had a cleanup day. I want to thank the members of the school community who came out on Saturday morning at Misco Nipmuc to lend a hand in this sponsored cleanup day. We had some student and staff lead contacts of Christopher Casey, a student lead, and Chris Schmidt, faculty lead. And at Misco, Ashlyn Kenny as a student and Mr. McGinnis as a faculty lead. I had that in the notes and then received an email today from MUCP, so I'm just going to read what they reported out. I didn't ask it for them. It was perfect timing right before the meeting. So they said at Nipmuc they had more than 40 students who did everything from collecting trash to cleaning up brush to dismantling an old shed. The football coach was in attendance. The boys lacrosse coach made this activity part of their practice, and it was an incredible way to teach the players about their community. At Misco, 11 students helped clean up trash and debris from the perimeter of the fields and building, ensuring that guests and those who drive in the pickup line areas will enjoy a clean, trash-free school. And the softball coach joined us to help drive participation with her team, as well as little siblings from Memorial School. So again, thank you to the partnership that we have with MUCP. We've already seen a lot of positive changes as a result. My next item, Dia stole, that's awesome. We have multicultural night, so we're reframing that international night and looking for some more participants from the community. We're reaching out to the community as well. And we are sending out the sign-up forms for people to sign up in all of the school newsletters in the next week, so just look out for that. We have upcoming MASC Day on the Hill. We have a number of our school committee members who will be attending this coming Thursday, so we'll touch base on that. But this is a legislative advocacy event held for MASC membership annually. This coming weekend, the Misco Hill Drama Guild will be performing on May 6th at 1 and 3 at Misco. And those who are familiar with Jack and the Beanstalk, the Little Red Hen, Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, Ugly Duckling, the Gingerbread Man will delight in the nonsensical fun and adaptations of these tales. District Comprehensive Accountability Review. We had our DCAR draft, I like to call it the DCAR for short, but was sent to us about 3 weeks ago. We gave a little bit of feedback of clarification of some facts, and I just received, like Thursday or Friday last week, the final report. So what I'm going to do at either the next meeting or the meeting after, I'm going to just figure out what presentations we have lined up. I'll be presenting an overview of some of the key findings from it, and I'll reshare that. I know I shared the draft. I think I did. I'll share what came out of it, but it was excellent. And I will say, and I thank them for all of their hard work as the team, they really did capture what I would believe is what's going on in the district. And from all the exceptional work that we do, but also, they identified the areas that for the most part, there weren't any surprises. They were areas that we knew we were either working on or they weren't a surprise. Like, oh, okay, that's something that they're pointing out. So it's been great. And then finally, what I have is strategic planning. We just had our last planning subcommittee meeting last Monday. We have another one coming up at the end of the month. We developed the first draft of strategic objectives and began outlining and sorting, lots of sorting of potential initiatives in one of the activities we did. And we remain on track with our planning and are scheduled to meet again in May. And we'll continue to work on that draft into June. Any questions on those quick? I tried to go fast. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just call up Cheryl. Oh, and Debbie. And Allison. Anybody else I should be naming? Okay. You got the slides. Get the slides up.
Thanks for having us. We're here tonight to share a bit about how educators across the district, and Debbie and Allison are representing educators across the district, are continuously working to develop connections with families in the community, and in two very specific ways that I think are really important to highlight because they're not as visible as some other ones that we know. So those two ways are, thanks, Sam, but that we'll highlight tonight are through the work of our ELL team, and Debbie's here representing the ELL team. and also through our systemic student support teams, our S3 teams, which we have at every single one of our schools, and Allison is a member of that team at high school. And this presentation specifically has some themes that I'd love to kind of like just highlight before we dive into this. They'll share a little bit about what these teams are doing to connect with families in really meaningful ways. And some of what you'll hear are ways that we're using data to really make those connections. And that's been an ongoing theme of some of the presentations we've had this school year and our strategic objectives. Also, how we're building systems and structures to attend to the needs of the whole child and really engaging families in that. And finally, also how we're collaborating and taking a very collaborative approach to child development internally and through the whole community. So now I'm going to turn it over to Debbie. And if you flip one more, yeah, she'll provide a brief context about our ELL landscape and how that has led to some of the changes and improvements that her team is really advocating for and has really brought to fruition here.
So I want to first start by just acknowledging the team. I'm Debbie Coyle. I work at Memorial Elementary. Denise McGovern works at Clough. And Kim Lopes, this year we brought her on. She is working at Nipmuc and at Musco. So the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that our population has increased. So if you look at this graphic, you can see that in 2018, I want you to look at the red is what we're looking at first. In 2018, we had 18 students who were identified as English learners. That number has increased to 2023. We are currently at 83 English learners. Okay, so those students are actively receiving services from me or my colleagues. And I was just telling Cheryl that that 83 number has been changing all day because we had some students walk in, we had some students walk out. I'm like, is it 84? Is it 82? As every time I went to the office, it was a new story. So currently we're 83. Tomorrow it may be 84. But that's how it goes. Some of our populations are a little more transient. So the blue numbers that you're looking at are the total number of students that are identified as their first language not being English. So those students, so 83 are receiving services, 83 to 139 are not currently receiving services. They may be students that have graduated from the program. They may be students who speak another language at home, but are not, are proficient in English. And then percentages, we went from less than 1% of our total MERS student population being an English learner to now it's just shy of 4% of all of our students are English learners. So because of the increase in our population, it comes with an increase in families. Our families are becoming more diverse. The languages they speak are more diverse. We have 4 primary languages that we translate for now actively. That is Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, and Gujarati. We have over 20 languages that our families speak in the district, which is much larger than it was 5 years ago. Looking at this graphic, you can see that in 2019, it was only a few percent of our families that actually needed translation. Now we're close to 40% of our L population. Okay, so this graphic is based upon the 83 students or whatever the numbers were in those previous years. But that does not include the families that we support who were former English learners. Some of those families still require translation, or families of students who were never L's. So we have many students who are proficient because they were born here, raised here, learned with their peers, but their parents still require support from us with translation. So, backing up.
Sorry.
Not there yet. So because of this, we've had to do some things in the district, right? In 2019, we only needed a handful of interpreters. 2023, we need a full team of interpreters, translators. So we've done a lot of hiring. We have these are people that work under contract. So we don't need them all the time. But if there's an open house, we may need 15, of one language interpreters come in. So we've had to hire people as an on-call basis. We've also contracted with a translation service so that when we have those high needs for certain events, like open houses or anything that would require a lot of parents in attendance, we can call this company. They will send over as many translators, interpreters as we need. So we've done that. We've also trained many of our teachers on Talking Points, which is an app that we can use either desktop or on the phone to reach our parents. We send it out in our language. They can write back in their language. And it's a really nice, two-way conversation that, a teacher can quickly type out, hey, don't forget, tomorrow's Wear Red Day, at the elementary level, or these events are happening, check your mail. So we've done that. We've also, all the principals and even Dr. Cohen send out their newsletters on SMORE, which is translatable. Click the little button. What language do you want it in? Parents can see all of that. So that's kind of just the communication piece. We've also made changes in Power School thanks to our amazing Liz Black, who just is wonderful. So Power School is our student information system where all of our student data is stored. When we have a new student moving to the district, we fill out certain areas of that database to let Power School know certain things. So Liz enabled us to be able to put in the family's required language. What language do they want their messages to come in? So we put it in Power School. Power School then connects with ThrillShare, and all of the district notifications now will come to the parent in their required language. Again, we have the interpreters call the families to make sure that's something they want. We have the form saying that they need translation, but maybe they don't want everything coming to them in their language. So we make those phone calls. Our interpreters have really nice connections with our families. Our families are comfortable calling them, and it's a really nice way when the other ways of communication don't work. So we've done the Power School. We've also in Power School this is what you're looking at here is a student page. Okay, so every teacher is able to see an alert about their student. So you see the little green by Bell schedule view, says ELL. The teacher can click on that. The box that you're seeing right there pops up. The teacher now knows that the child is an English learner, what they screened in at or what their READA score is depending on the child, and whether or not the family requires translation. This family requires translation to Portuguese. We also have alerts for former English learners because we're required to monitor students for 4 years after they exit the program. So that alert would show up. Or we have a third alert, which is just if the parent needs translation. So every time that a teacher goes into the Power School account for attendance or whatever, they can see those alerts and they're aware. Plus, we also notify every teacher at the beginning of the school year that these students, teachers, nurses, office staff, we send out notifications to let people know that their families need translation. Also, we translate all the documents, obviously, IEPs, anything that's required by the state gets translated in person by our translators that we have.
Last one.
That was it, I think.
All right.
So, well, I do have one thing.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important to us in the EL department, I just want to say this, that we reach all of our families. I mean, they are who we are, right? So Mercy is only stronger by every language that we can get, right? I mean, it makes us grow and it makes us more inclusive, and we try to be. So there's a few bugs we're still working out, and we're just going to continue to, progress in the right direction so that we can make sure everyone gets what they need.
And I'm so glad you brought up the technology team because that's even behind the scenes, right? Liz and the rest of the technology department are really enabling some of these connections to be made, and also are helping with the work that the S3 team is doing. So now we'll toss it over to Allison, and Allison will share a little bit about the S3 work and how that work is really working to make connections with the community as well.
Yeah, so we are in a 3-year partnership with Boston College and the Rennie Center called the S3 Academy. So there's S3 teams at each school in the district. And the purpose of the partnership is to develop a model of consistent supports that's rooted in data to help students as they move through MURSD. So at its core, when it's up and running, essentially every student will have sort of, I don't want to call it a file, but sort of like a review that that's both student driven and faculty driven. So, and this is very inclusive. It's not just academic data. It's not just, social emotional data, things like that. It's everything kind of in one. So it's really looking at the whole child. A lot of times there's lots of different sources of data that we're pulling from. And I know speaking as a counselor at Nipmuc, sometimes when students are, across 7 teachers throughout the day, there's a lot of different points, of data. So it's also an opportunity to streamline that data into one place. So it looks at academic data, looks at social, emotional, and behavioral data, family and home life, and health and well-being. So, and this is something that, so every student would have this review, and then as they move through the grades, it's added to, teachers can add to it, students can add to it, and it's also kind of building on that, that narrative of, it's more than just the grades. So this also looks at not only needs of students or challenges that students are having, but also different strengths that they have. So one thing when we're looking at all of this and we're collecting all of this data, it's one thing to collect it, but we also have to figure out what to do with the data. What are we gonna, what kind of interventions are we gonna implement? And so S3, at the core of S3 is looking at what services we have already in schools, services and resources in our schools, but also in our community. So we've been, over the course of the past months or so, we've been kind of taking an audit of what school-based services we have as interventions for student needs, and also potential opportunities and enrichment for students to build on their strengths. So it's giving us the opportunity to communicate more with families and the community. And I think that's kind of, it's a 3-year partnership and we're in year 1. So we're still kind of building on it. I know that speaking as a counselor at Nipmuc, one of the things that the counselors did this year was we met with a representative from Westboro Behavioral Health, which was really helpful. And so just things like that to kind of see what's out there in the community in terms of resources for students. That's going to be able to integrate into this S3 process. Oh, and this is kind of what we're building out. So this is what it looks like. It's basically a bank of resources that we have, and we've been able to categorize them as academic resources. Like you can see academic, that first one there, NHS peer tutoring, that's a resource that we have in school here. We have the link to the website. So, and you can kind of read down there. So we're in the process of building this out. But the hope is that it's going to be this kind of one-stop shop of resources for teachers to access, just to quickly be able to, I think we did a case study of a student who was, she was really gifted in science and enjoyed science, struggled with peer relationships. There are a few more parts to her profile, but looking at, okay, if we're working with a student like this, what opportunities could we connect her with to kind of help bolster that interest in science? Could we connect her with a mentorship program or a lunch buddy or something like that? So we've been working through some case studies like that. And that's been helpful in kind of seeing how this can be implemented at our school.
It's great. And I'll just take the opportunity to say again that the idea is with all of our schools involved in this, that the teams will kind of create these whole student reviews that are really meaningful at the levels that they're at. But what we'll have to take advantage of over time as this evolves is that the information that we compile for students in earlier grades will very easily be able to be transferred to the next grade. And we'll be able to capture a database where educators will be able to actually input what's worked with these kids and have this kind of real digital record and a tool to be able to use for all students. This is a tier 1 support. It's not just for students who have needs. It's really about connecting students with their passions and interests as well. And so on that, there's lots of work we're still doing with that, but I thought that it would be great, just to kind of share where we're at with some of these things, because I think we have all these events that happen all the time. They're really awesome. Between the celebrations of writing and the Inspired Learning Days and the multicultural night that we have coming up and everything, and some of this work is really powerful and impactful and a little bit behind the scenes. So that's the purpose of this presentation, because we've got a lot of educators who are really working to make these connections with families.
So as you put all of this together, how much access will the parents have to some of these reports and things that are specifically, I guess, is related to their own students? Because I know this is a question I've asked a couple of times, because I know we're collecting more and more data, and we're generating more reports, and we're trying to tailor education and academics and all those kinds of things towards them. So I know we're trying to learn how to use that effectively for communication with parents. Just like I was wondering how much of this they'll have access to.
Well, we're partners in this, right? And so there's a lot of the information that's actually coming from parents and coming from those kinds of relationships that we have when there's a student that has a need or something like that, or when a parent says, this is what my child is really interested in. So in addition to that, a lot of the data that is starting to kind of be behind the scenes and build this is data that actually we've been talking about a lot. iReady will factor into this where at the grades that it's utilized, so will Panorama, and we'll be able to bring it together though in a way where the process, this is really about a process, not a product or a different platform, right? But the process where teachers and educators will kind of sit down and ask questions about students in each of these domains and ask where are their strengths and where are their interests and how can we get them plugged in ways that will help build their skills in other ways.
So it's more about creating more communication, having the school understand more about each individual student.
That's right. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Okay, on to new business. Field trip approvals.
Do we need to put a trigger warning on this one? So we have two quick field trip approvals that we're looking for. The first is on Wednesday of this week. Our students in engineering have another opportunity to go up to Maine to visit Blue Shift. It was kind of a last minute. They're doing another rocket launch test with new payload. So Jim Borman would like to take, I think it's 5 or 7, 5 of it engineering students back up to Maine on this Wednesday. So
okay.
Quick turnaround, but.
Could I get a motion to approve the field trip?
Motion to approve the field trip to Maine for rocket scientists.
Second, send the rocket scientists.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. There we go.
Perfect. One more, just quick. Our math teachers are collaborating with our physics teacher. Again, Jim Gorman and Courtney Leisha is heading it up as our math teacher, is looking to, after MCAS, is kind of a celebratory educational trip, take the students to United Skates of America, which is a roller skating place in Rumford, Rhode Island. They have specific STEM lessons around kind of the physics and Newton's laws of motion to engage students in that. And then obviously there's skating that happens after it. So the proposed date is June 12th So in that final last week of school, it's a full day trip, optional for all sophomores, so they'll open it up to however many want to go. I think we need 75 to go. The cost is $30 per student. So that was the second one.
Great. Could I have a motion to approve the Rhode Island field trip?
Move to approve the Rhode Island field trip for sophomores.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
There we go.
Appreciate it.
School choice. So every year by June 1st, we have to approve that our district will be a school choice district again for the following year.
Oh,
So
it
I
is, yeah.
just need a motion. I mean, if there's discussion, I don't know if you want to discuss this or not, but I just need a motion.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Thank you.
Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee. Evaluation.
So we completed the evaluation for Dr. Cohen for this current school year on the weekend. But I'll just back up actually and explain the whole process. So at the beginning of the evaluation period last summer, Dr. Cohen filled out a self-evaluation. And then from that, and from previous year's evaluation, she developed a series of goals for herself that were then presented to the subcommittee, discussed them, and then brought them forward to the full committee where we approved her goals in the fall sometime. We conducted a mid-year evaluation to discuss the progress of the achievement of those goals and to outline the remaining timeline for the evaluation, which culminated in all the members committee individually filling out their evaluation of the superintendent, which I then compiled the weekend into a final summary of the superintendent evaluation. So I will now go through the results of that evaluation. Each committee member separately evaluated Dr. Cohen's performance. For the goals, the ratings are as follows: exceeded, met, significant progress, some progress, and did not meet. So starting with goal number 1, professional practice goal for engagement and communications. In order to continue to build trust and strengthen relationships with Mendon-Upton parents, families, and community stakeholders, as well as communicate the story of authentic learning experiences for our students. Dr. Cohen will continue to learn strategies to better lead this effort to produce more content on our website and to modernize our school district's logo and brand. The school committee rates the progress of Dr. Cohen on this goal as exceeded, 5 votes exceeded. Generally, comments touched on the wide variety of action items that Dr. Cohen had marked off in pursuit of this goal, including various updates to the district's website, working with a PR firm to bring media attention to the district's students and program accomplishments, and various marketing and branding initiatives. Most university reviews were impressed with the amount accomplished in a year's time. Moving on to goal number 2, which is the student learning goal, MTSS, and data inquiry. In order to ensure our instructional practices are positively impacting student achievement and growth, Dr. Cohen would enact instructional policies to lead instructional and data meetings to monitor improvements in the multi-tiered system of support, including Tier 1 practices. Overall, the school committee rated Dr. Cohen's progress on this goal as met. 5 ratings, individual ratings of met. In general, the reviews touched on the broad data set that is now available to our teachers, from iReady and Panorama to street level data to less concrete qualitative assessments. Several reviewers mentioned presentations regarding how staff is using that data to inform day-to-day teachings. Also brought up PD offered to help staff become better versed in these data sets. Instructor advice for this goal mainly touched on 2 topics. While the data is undoubtedly a good thing, it is important to continue to ensure that this data is producing actionable planning for teachers to impact student learning. And we also look forward to this data being more widely shared with families. Goal number 3, the first district strategic goal, strategic planning. In order to move our district's vision, mission, vision, and stories forward, Dr. Cohen was to create a forward-thinking strategic plan collaboratively with the university stakeholders, including planning for the next success model. Overall, the school committee rated progress of Dr. Cohen's goal as met. 1 rating exceeded and 4 ratings were met. Comments mainly focused on the dedication Dr. Cohen exhibited driving the district strategic planning committee, and appreciation of her ability to continue driving the current plan's goals while keeping an eye on the district's future. And noted that while the strategic plan has not yet been completed, we are generally looking forward to receiving the final product, and we are well on pace for completion of that by the end of the review cycle. And finally, district goal number 4, the other district strategic goal, capital planning. In order to ensure that students are provided with safe and up-to-date facilities that facilitate teaching and learning, a comprehensive review of district facilities and operations will be conducted to create a capital improvement plan that addresses current and future facility needs. Overall, the committee rated progress of Dr. Cohen's goal as significant progress plus. So 2 ratings of met and 3 ratings of significant progress. Comments were generally supportive of the progress made in this goal, while mostly acknowledging that it is not yet been met. That delay is due to delay in receiving the report from Purdue and Associates that is to form the basis of this capital planning work, just from prioritizing other major district planning initiatives such as the DCAR and the other strategic planning review. Please understand what is not yet complete, and it's also possible that we will conduct this review in 4 to 6 weeks. We'd actually be closer to having that goal in hand, given just the recent return in the Associates report. Moving on to the standards of practice, they're supposed to be exhibited by superintendents. The first standard is instructional leadership to promote the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of school. Overall, the school committee rates the performance of Dr. Cohen's standard as exemplary, 3 votes of exemplary, 2 votes of proficient. Dr. Cohen generally received high marks in this standard. Highlights included data-informed decision-making across all schools, as well as the leadership team, and strong data analysis grounding she has built. As for advice provided, the rubric for this, for some portions of this standard specifically mentions shares data with the community as a criteria, and when we were able to see the district do a better job of that. Another reviewer noted that while there's no reason to doubt Dr. Cohen's impact on curriculum, we haven't heard much about that as a school committee this year. Moving on to standard number 2, management and operations, to promote the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling. Overall, the school committee rates the performance of Dr. Cohen in the standard as proficient, 5 votes of proficient, the ratings of proficient. Several reviews in the standard mention how well Dr. Cohen handled the budget process this year, both in the preparation of the budget in coordination with the towns and the actual presentation of the budget at the budget hearing. Another reviewer mentioned more broadly the process and procedure improvements that Dr. Cohen has undertaken this year. 2 specific areas of improvement were highlighted. First, the district has made good progress in modernizing various aspects of the human resources department. Multiple reviews note there is still some work to be done in recruitment and retention of talented staff members. years. And then second, one reviewer noted that it seems like Dr. Cohen hires people with similar backgrounds to her, or would like to see a little more diversity of thoughts in the district's leadership team. Standard number 3, family and community engagement. To promote the learning and growth of all students and staff, successful staff through effective partnerships with families, community organizations, and other stakeholders to support the mission of the school district. Overall, the school committee rates Dr. Cohen's performance in this standard as proficient plus, 2 ratings of exemplary, 3 of proficient. Responses in this section were generally brief, with most reiterating the comments from the superintendent's first goal. As for component competencies, engagement, and communications, not coincidentally, those scored the highest. And finally, the 4th standard, professional culture, to promote the success of all students by sustaining school culture, reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff. The school committee rates the performance of Dr. Cohen in this standard as exemplary, 3 votes for ratings of exemplary, 2 of proficient. Highlights in this standard include a commitment to high standards as well as communications. The viewer did note that Dr. Cohen's communications to the school committee could benefit from some streamlining. Specifically, they noted that she tends to share everything with us in an attempt to make us as knowledgeable as she is, and a more succinct communication protocol. Dr. Cohen more clearly outlines key items for the committee to note and focus on could make our use of time more efficient. So overall, Dr. Cohen received positive reviews from all evaluators. This has been a very busy year between DESC review in the fall, strategic planning committee in the new year. Dr. Cohen's managed to be added challenge as well. The notable strength is how Dr. Cohen is displaying. She has led the district to improve its communication with the community and the larger public. Most of the advice offered to Dr. Cohen fell in the broader category of finish what you started, finishing what you started, ranging from capital planning work to the district's commitment to better share the wealth of data with our students' family. Something that Mr. Lewis felt confident that Dr. Cohen would manage in time. How does this work? Do we have a motion to accept the superintendent's evaluation? Is there any further comments?
Other comments?
I want to say thank you for all of your time. I know it's a lot to go through everything that I send you, duly noted. But everything that I send you with all the links and evidence and all of that, and the whole process can take some time. But I appreciate the feedback, and really it's speaks to the leadership team and our teachers and everyone else in the organization too. That what brings us forward. So thank you.
I guess I'd probably speak for the group, and I think I could easily say over the last 2 years, you and the role have definitely grown in many different ways and delivered great work. We appreciate it. All right, then could I get a motion to accept the superintendent evaluation?
Make a motion to accept the superintendent evaluation.
Second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
There, it's accepted.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. All right, other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of close to the meeting. Oh, okay. Future agenda items, reorganization of the school committee. Got district goals, facility assessment, and presentation. All right, could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
We adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There we go. 9:05.